Hi everyone, it's John here from the Ohazassu Japan channel, and I'm back for episode 90. I hope everyone's been well, and I hope everything is coming through loud and clear. There's a guy doing some trimming over there for the trees and the grass and whatnot, and but I've got the microphone over here. It's nice and close to me, so hopefully it's good. So let's get started right away. If you're new to the channel, I'm John. I'm an Australian guy. I've been living in Japan for about 12, 13 years now. I've done a year in Osaka a very long time ago, and I've been here in Nagoya for about 12, almost 13 years now. So basically I'm a translator. I do bilingual project management and that sort of thing. And I do this channel here on YouTube and on X and on the podcast world or whatever it's called. And I like talking about life in Japan, the language, things I've learnt along the way, daily life, things that happen, thoughts about home, biculturalism, bilingualism, just pretty much anything that comes up as a person living in Japan long term. So if you're new to Japan, or if you're thinking about coming to Japan, whether it be to live or to travel, I hope I can be of some use to you. And always feel free to ask questions in the comments below if you have any. Before we begin, a quick reminder that at the end of every episode I have something called Word of the Day, and that's basically a word that I choose in Japanese that's related to something that we've spoken about in the episode, and I present that as a bit of educational material for everyone at the end of each episode so you can learn it. All of those are uploaded to both my X account and also to the website, and that leads me into the next topic I want to talk about, the website. It's finally live. I got it up on, let me just check my date here, May 30. I promised that it was going to be done during April sometime, and then that turned into early May, but it ended up being late May. I was like, we got into mid-May, and I was telling myself, there's no way I can let this get past May, so I just made it on May 30. So please check that out if you can. It's ohazassu.com. I'll put the URL down below and also here on the screen for you, and you can check that out. You can look at all of our previous episodes and also some special content that I only upload to YouTube and not on the podcast channel, and you can check those out. And you can also see all of the Word of the Day words grouped on one page and go through them at your own pace. Okay, so let's begin. All right, so on the topic of going home, I'd like to start off with. So I asked this question actually the other day on X, and I got a number of different replies which I'll share with you now. I asked everyone, how often would you go back if money wasn't an issue? When I say go back, I mean if you've come here from a different country, the question was, how often would you go back to the country that you originally came from? And I got a really big mix of answers. One person said once every 10 years. Someone said 4 times a year, which is like the total other extreme. And someone said maybe never. So there's a big variety of answers there, and everyone obviously has their reasons for how often they want to go back or not go back. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I went back a couple of weeks ago. You'll see all of the little pictures and posts and things like that I put up while I was over there, and I made some interesting observations. It's funny, each time I go back, I notice something different, and I also notice my feelings changing a bit. I think each time I go back, I kind of feel less and less attached to Australia every time I go back. It's always going to be home in the sense that, you know, there are things there that remind me of my childhood. There are friends, family there. So it's something that will always, you know, have that in place in my heart. But when it comes to the comfort of lifestyle, of living somewhere, that feeling of home sweet home, I don't really get that anymore when I go back to Australia. And it's, you know, and it's actually the opposite. When I came back to Japan, I remember feeling, you know, and I have felt this the last few times that I've been back to Australia. When I get back to Japan, I feel like, wow, home sweet home. Trains are on time, everything's clean, the toilets have little showers and bidets built in. I mean, I'm just being superficial and facetious here, but yeah, you know what I mean. It's a very, very comfortable feeling when you get back to home, wherever that may be. And that raises an interesting question about what home actually is, you know, and that comes up a lot when I talk to people in the same situation. What is home? You know, how do you define it? It can be a tricky one to answer, but it's an interesting question, and it's something I like to think about every now and then, because my opinions on that also change, or evolve is probably a better word, but it's an interesting concept to think about. Okay, a couple of the observations that I made while I was over there, for the sake of conversation here. The bins. Okay, so bins are an interesting one. Rubbish bins, or trash cans as some people call them. So the rubbish bins over here in Japan, they don't really exist. You put everything into a garbage bag that you have to pay for. It needs to be a special type of bag that's been certified by the city, your local authority, and they cost about 10 cents or 20 cents depending on the size of bag that you use, and you need to put out the trash in the right bag as well. So you've got, where we are here in Nagoya, red bags are for burnable trash and blue bags are for recyclables like plastic and so on. So in Australia, firstly, there are no specified bags. You know, you don't have to buy special bags to put your rubbish out. Secondly, there are these dedicated bins provided by the local government called wheelie bins, and they have lids on them. Now, this is something that's puzzled me a little, why Japan doesn't just implement something like this, because everywhere you go in Japan, you'll see that crows love attacking rubbish on rubbish day, and they make a huge mess, and it causes a problem for everyone. The building manager, the residents, all of those people that are involved. I really feel for them because it can get really messy. In Australia, you have these wheelie bins and they've got lids and birds just cannot get in. So we don't really worry about that. But on the flip side, this means, I feel, that people just carelessly throw whatever they want into that bin. And I gotta say, like, you know, as someone who lived in Australia, I can say that when I first moved to Japan, I felt that everything was a bit too strict. But after a while, I started feeling like, wait a second, maybe we are just too careless in Australia. Maybe we should be paying more attention to recycling and things like that. And that leads me to the next point, is that I didn't really feel that people take recycling all that seriously. The recycling bins exist, but there is no kind of strict separation of the different types of recyclable rubbish. So it just felt, I don't know, maybe if you look into it, it probably exists, but it's not very obvious, and I don't get the impression that people really care about the proper separation of recyclables all that much. I could be wrong, and if I am, please let me know in the comments below, because, you know, maybe things have changed. I was only there for a week, by the way, so whatever I saw is quite limited, but I would love to know if you know, maybe it's different in your part of Australia or in your part of the world. I would love to know. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about staff attitudes. Japan is world famous for having some of, if not the best customer service in the world, right? I'm pretty sure there's no argument about that. And I could really feel the difference. I don't remember feeling it this much until, you know, this time. I really felt it. I went to a shop at the airport just to buy a couple of like muesli bars, you know, for the plane. And this guy over there, he literally, and if you're watching, by the way, I mean, you might be watching, no offense intended, or I mean, we all have bad days, and it looked like, honestly, genuinely, that you were having a bad day. I hope that was the case, because if that's how you are normally, I think you may want to consider a different industry, perhaps, or maybe just, you know, reconsider the way that you're approaching customers or the industry. But the behavior was unthinkable in Japan. I've never experienced that anywhere that I've been in Japan, and I hope I never experience it ever again. Not only in Japan, but anywhere in the world. It was very dismissive, and there was no communication, and it felt quite rude, to be honest. It was just very abrupt, and there was no eye contact. There was nothing. It was just, it felt like I was, you know, not welcome in that, not only not welcome, but I felt like I had to get out of there ASAP after my purchase. And so these kinds of things, you know, and that wasn't just an isolated incident. At the gate, the boarding gate, it was interesting. We were all waiting to be called, as you do, and our flight details or our number was displayed on the monitors. And that always means, wherever I've been at an airport, it means that it's time to get up off your seat in the waiting area and make your way towards the boarding gate and, you know, line up and wait for the gates to open and start boarding. So the monitor changed, and it said, you know, group sorry, mosquitoes flying around already. And so the monitor changed at the boarding gate and it said group 4. So as you probably know, they call you by group number when you're entering the boarding gate. And so I was in group 4. I checked my boarding pass and I was like, yep, group 4. And I headed toward the boarding gate. There was this really intimidating looking person, and she was standing at the gate with this very authoritarian kind of look on her face. And she said, nah, just sit down, just sit down. And I was like, okay, one, it's really rude to not give any explanation. Two, it's just like, you guys changed the sign, right? And now you're telling people rudely to just go back and sit down, you know? And I was just like, did I miss something? Like, I don't actually remember Australia being like this that long ago. I mean, last time I went back was about 2 years ago, and I don't remember encountering something like this before. And there was no reason for this to happen. No one had done anything to anger this person, and it was just weird. And there was one European guy, he actually approached her and very calmly was pointing at the sign. I didn't say anything. I'm just like, yep, okay, kind of not surprised. It's not expected, but it wasn't a surprise to see this kind of customer service. And this guy was pointing at the sign quietly and calmly saying, do you know that, the sign changed? And that's why people are coming and lining up. And she just dismissed him. She didn't respond to his comment. She was just like, her answer to that was, yeah, just sit down. And everyone was a bit, put off. Anyway, that kind of stuff, it just seems to be, I wouldn't say normal, but it's not surprising when you encounter bad customer service in Australia. And that was disappointing. I wasn't really happy about that. Another thing, and I'll put a photo up here for you, there were these signs all over the boarding areas, all over the screens in the boarding areas. And they looked so scary, like a guy in a SWAT uniform telling you to not drink before you get on the plane, or to not get drunk before you get on the plane, because you could get arrested and you could get, put into prison and fined and all sorts of horrible things. And it just made me wonder. I paused and I looked at it, and this is probably because I've been here for so long, and I like to observe little signs and things that tell us how to behave and what to do. And it made me think about how things are done in Japan. And I was thinking, what's a similar kind of situation? And I remembered a poster that I sometimes see in the subways about violence towards train staff. And there are no pictures or photos of scary looking police officers and, all that kind of stuff, like trying to intimidate you. Sometimes we see cute characters or little mascots telling us to behave. Sometimes I think the most intimidating one that I've seen is there was a fist or something saying, even if all it takes is one fist and it'll change your life, like in a bad way. I just thought the approach is so different, and I'd love to know. I mean, I'm not an expert in this kind of thing, so, but I'd love to know if there's any kind of study into what kind of messaging is the most effective for this kind of situation. Is it best to use a cute character the way that Japan does, or is it better to use an intimidating figure of a SWAT team guy dressed up in armor and carrying a gun and all this kind of stuff? I mean, I don't know, I just felt it was really out of place. I had never seen anything like that in Australia when I was growing up. Maybe things have changed, I don't know, but I didn't get a good vibe from that messaging. I don't know, maybe that's how it's done over there. But if it works, governments do what works. Hopefully, usually. I hope that's the case. Anyway, okay, next up, I want to quickly talk about the prices in Australia. They're out of control. Coke, I've got the prices down here. Let me just quickly check them. Water was $4.30. Let's just use the simple calculation of 100 yen to the dollar, Australian dollar. Water, 430 yen, $4.30. Coke, $4.60, 460 yen. Eggs, there must be something going on with the eggs. There must be some kind of a bird flu pandemic, I don't know what's going on. But eggs, the cheaper ones, were $7.99 a dozen. That's 12 eggs. That was for the barn laid. And for the free range eggs, they were $10.49. That's 1,049 yen for the expensive ones and 799 yen for the cheap ones. Things like, you know, it's funny. I was looking and observing, checking out the prices of various things. Some things actually don't feel that expensive, considering, you know, obviously in Australia the wage is a lot higher. But it doesn't account for everything. It doesn't help with everything. So okay, coffee's something that I love talking about on this channel. So coffee is an interesting one. Like, for example, I had a coffee the other day here in Japan, and it was 650 yen. Back in Australia, I had a really nice flat white, and that was $4.50, which is 450 yen. So that 650 yen coffee in Japan is actually a lot more expensive, I think, than it is in Australia for that. However, you could argue that the 650 yen coffee in Japan was in a nice coffee shop, very clean, very boutique, very nice. I'd say an average coffee, let's look at Starbucks. That's probably what most people consider an average coffee here in Japan. You're still looking at about 400 yen for an average coffee, right? Maybe even more when you get into the fancy ones. So Japan is actually probably more expensive when it comes to coffee. Of course, if you want to spend crazy amounts of money for coffee in Australia, you can. You can buy coffee for $6, $7, $8 or whatever in Australia if you like. But generally speaking, it's about the $5 mark, 5, 6, somewhere around there. So that was interesting. Things like cheeses. Cheeses always come up. Cheese is probably cheaper in Australia. Things like cold cuts, hams and salamis and that sort of thing, a much bigger range of things to choose from in Australia, and the prices actually, from what I could tell, they're not more expensive than Japan. I think they might even be cheaper in some situations. Let's see, what else was there? Things like burgers, I feel like it's kind of expensive in Australia. About maybe $14, $15 for a decent burger. But then again, I don't know, you see things, proper burger joints in Tokyo, and they charge about the same. So maybe Japan, in those kinds of things, maybe it's relatively more expensive. Where things change though, and this is a huge one, and it cancels out everything else, is property. Property is insane. And there's something sinister going on with the rents. Rents are increasing every year without fail. I spoke to someone actually over there, and she told me that last year her rent went up $50 a week. Let's do the quick conversion to yen. That's 20,000 yen a month. Okay. This year her rent went up $100 a week. Right? $10,000 yen a week. That's insane. That's 40,000 yen. Add the 20,000 from last year. That's 60,000 yen a month in rental increases in just 2 years. There is no way, and I can guarantee this, there is no way the average person is going to be making $600 a month extra a month in income just at the click of their fingers. There is no way. So people are essentially making less money, not able to spend, and people are literally getting pushed out of their rental properties and being forced to move either further away or interstate or overseas. Hi. So it's really actually something that's a bit of a worry. I just can't get my head around how expensive property is. And the sad thing is, there is no end in sight. It just looks like, and people are kind of accepting that this is something that just happens every year. It's part of life. Property rent goes up every year. And this is not like, it's easy to think that landlords are being greedy and just increasing the prices because they can. And don't get me wrong, of course, some of them are, and partly even the ones who aren't, part of it is because they can, right? But the thing is, they're also under a bit of pressure. Interest rates are apparently going up. I don't know the details, sorry, but this is just based on stories that I heard from people that I spoke to who are, experiencing this themselves. But interest rates are going up, or expenses are going up. If it's not interest rates, it's the amount of money you have to pay a plumber to fix something small, right? Guy told me just for a half-hour plumber visit to install a new tap, just in labour, it costs $300. That includes, you know, the call-out fee and the labour fee and all that. Parts are separate, okay? Parts are separate. They bought the part separately and they paid the plumber $300 to install this thing, and it literally took half an hour. So this kind of thing is pressuring landlords and property owners to push up the rent. I mean, if you can't make money out of your property as an investor, what are you going to do? You either have to put up the rent or you just have to cut your losses and sell and try to find something better to invest in. And this is kind of scary because Australia, for the last, 20, 30, maybe more years, has always pushed property as an investment. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why why demand is so high. Somewhere like Japan, property isn't really pushed as an investment. It doesn't appreciate like it does in Australia. So most people, this is again just my observation, most people in Japan buy property to live in so that they don't have to pay rent for the rest of their lives, and so maybe they have something to leave their kids when they pass away. In Australia, it's used as a tax incentive. People literally buy property to pay less tax, to make an income based on the capital gains, and it's turned into, is it technically speculative investing? I don't know, because maybe it is. I'm not like a specialist in this kind of stuff, so I can't really comment. But if you're basing your purchase or your ownership of a home based on what you think it might be worth 10 years from now, 20 years from now, based on my interpretation, that's speculative. Because there are no guarantees that it's going to go up tenfold or whatever. I mean, the last 20 years have been crazy in Australia, but there's no guarantee that that's going to always continue. And Japan is probably one of the countries in the world that can tell you all about property bubbles. But it's an interesting thing that's going on. Anyway, I went on too long about prices and property things and that in Australia. Next, I'm going to talk about coffee shop hours and just coffee shops in general. So coffee shops in Sydney, they usually open at about 6 or 7 a.m. And if you live in Japan, you'll probably be laughing with me because that would be a dream over here. Most coffee shops here, they open at about 10, sometimes 11, and sometimes never. They just have like a day off, on the only day that you can go. It always, their teikubi, it's called in Japanese, the regular day off, every business has one day off a week. And it's usually a weekday, so they can go to the bank or whatever. But that day always seems to fall on the day that you can go. But I don't really notice that in Australia. It's usually 7 days. That's one thing. The early opening hours are really good because it means you can go before work, and that's what a lot of people do. You leave home early, you go get your coffee, you chill out a bit, and then you go to work and you're in a good mood. But the flip side of that is they do close a bit earlier than the coffee shops here in Japan. So I guess it's a bit of both. You can't have everything, and that actually you can't get everything thing comes up a lot in Japan/Western country conversations, because the things that we have here in Japan that are fantastic, they don't exist over there, and sometimes it's vice versa. So but yeah. I really like that early cafe culture. I think eventually it might actually end up coming here because the demand is probably there. I reckon if there were a variety of nice coffee shops open at 7, I think people would go because there is a dotor down that way over there near, sorry for shaking the table, there is a dotor over there near the train station over there at Tsurumai Station, and it actually, I think it opens at 7 and it's always full. Like there are always people there having a coffee or a sandwich or something. So I think the demand would be there. Just not too sure why the coffee shops open so late. It just could be tradition. If that's how it always was and there's no reason to change it, and if you can still operate your business that way, I guess that makes sense. Why would you open it so early? Everyone likes to sleep in. But it's something that I like and I thought was really nice. It was kind of energizing to see so many people This coffee shop that I was at, by the way, or going to in the mornings, it was just really energizing to see, no exaggeration, probably about 30, 40, something like that, 30 or 40 people sitting down, having a coffee, laughing and talking and socializing with each other. And it's just something you just don't see here. So yeah, that's the coffee shop thing, observation that I had. And I just think, it'd be nice to see one day in Japan. Library noise, this was an interesting one. There was only one day, fortunately it was just one day. I was in a bit of a crappy mood because I had to do work, but I had some time to reflect and reframe that a bit later on. And I was like, you know what, on the bright side, it was only one day out of like a whole week. So it could have been worse. It could have been every day. So luckily it was just one day. I had a bit of work to do and I had to go somewhere quiet to concentrate. And so I found a local library. And so I went to the library and I took my computer and all that and I started working. And one thing I noticed, and don't get me wrong, it was quiet enough to do my work. So I had no trouble doing my work. However, I noticed something. It was noisier than my local subway here in Nagoya. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, you know what? When I'm on the subway in Nagoya, it's actually less noisy than this. And I don't know, which one is more interesting. Maybe the trains here are just too quiet, but I don't complain about that because I kind of like being able to rest on the train. I like closing my eyes sometimes and taking a bit of a nap. I do appreciate that and I love that. Or is the library too noisy over there in Sydney? I'm leaning more towards, I think it shouldn't be that noisy in a library. There were a bunch of guys over there loudly discussing something about rugby, I think it was. Not surprising, of course, but the library is not the place to do it, especially in an area where there are tables and people are obviously studying and working. So I don't know, I just think that level of consideration doesn't really exist. It's not seen as something bad necessarily, it's just the way it is. But after you live in Japan for a certain amount of time, it makes you wonder, like, why is it that we don't have that respect or consideration towards our fellow members of society? It just makes sense, doesn't it? Like, why would you want to disturb people? But that was just an interesting observation that I made. It was, this is one thing I love about living in different countries. You first notice things, and then you start realizing, like, wait a second, which one makes more sense and which one doesn't? And then you start questioning everything. And it becomes real. I actually really enjoy that kind of observation and discussion. It really intrigues me. Okay, mask discrimination. This was really funny. I quickly mentioned this in a video that I put up casually on my X feed the other day. This is the first time this has happened. Someone assumed that I was Japanese because I was wearing a mask. I had just gotten on the plane. And on Singapore Airlines, they hand out these hot towels when you just get on to refresh yourself. And the stewardess was walking down the aisle and with these, this tray of hot towels. And her line of sight was sort of looking down at people's, because I think at the same time they want to check you're wearing your seatbelt. So she was looking down towards people's laps and, that area there. And obviously their hands as well to see if they're going to receive, if they're ready to receive the towel. And she was saying, thank you, here you go, or, whatever in English as she was approaching me. And when she got to me, she said, arigato. So it was thank you, thank you, thank you, here you go, here you go, here you go. And all of a sudden, arigato. And I was like, what? That's a bit weird. I speak Japanese and that's fine, but I just thought it was funny how she suddenly switched to Japanese when she got to me. And so I looked up and she looked at me and our eyes met and she kind of, like I could see her, she kept her composure, but you can, tell a lot from someone's eyes. And I could see the reflex reaction and she suddenly switched to English and she went, oh, thank you. So that was interesting. It's the first time it's ever happened to me, and I thought that was kind of amusing. I'm of course just being a bit, I'm joking around saying it was discrimination. It's not discrimination. It's just, I think the brain subconsciously making a decision based on the first thing that, you know, that entered the eye, and that happens. So that was kind of funny. Let me know if you've ever experienced something like that. I love that kind of stuff, that kind of story. Oh yeah, the suitcase got delayed. I got back to Japan, and just as I got to the baggage area, I got this message on my phone, an email and an SMS. And that doesn't usually happen. Most SMSs I receive are from scam numbers, and they're scam related things. So that was a bit of a worry. And so I checked that, and I was like, okay, if it's a scam, they're really good at knowing when I'm arriving at a certain airport. So I checked the email, and there was an email from Singapore Airlines as well, and it actually had all of my details, and it had, and I checked the baggage ticket number as well that I had on my boarding pass, and that matched as well. So I was like, okay, it's most likely it's not a scam. And I opened the email and I read it, and it said that my bag was delayed and that I had to speak to someone in Lost and Found. So I looked around and I couldn't see any counter named Lost and Found, but there were a few staff standing around, sort of watching people picking up their bags. And so I approached one, and it was really interesting. She knew exactly what I was talking about, so it looked like it's not something strange that happens. And she was like, oh yeah, this happens when the stopover is really quick. So in my case, it was just a 1 hour stopover. And apparently that can happen. What happens is that the baggage can't make it in time to the next plane. And so in that case, they obviously aren't gonna hold up an entire plane just because of one bag or two bags. And so what they do is they just let the plane go, and then they send this notification out saying your bag's delayed. It's not a very good feeling though. Fortunately I had and that's a tip for you if you travel, always carry your important stuff in your carry-on. Never put important stuff in checked luggage, because this kind of thing can happen. In worst case situations, they can lose your bag. So you got to ask yourself, when you put stuff into that big bag, that big suitcase, ask yourself, am I okay with losing this? Because it can happen. So my computer, all of my chargers, all of that stuff, important stuff, obviously, you know, any important documents that you might have, all of that was in my backpack, and that was with me on the plane. So I didn't suffer in any way for work. The only thing I did suffer with was that my reading glasses were in my suitcase. But yeah, I was able to cope without them for a couple of days. I went to Daiso and I got myself a pair of reading glasses for 100 yen. And they were surprisingly good for some reason. I was kind of surprised by that. I had never bought them before, and they actually did the job. I wouldn't be able to wear them every day because they're not obviously made for me. They're not my prescription. But it's something that, yeah, just keep in mind. If you need emergency reading glasses, go to a Daiso and just fix yourself up for $1 and you'll be good. So yeah, what happened was they made me do some paperwork, and they told me that they'll, whenever they find out, or when they find out what's going on, they'll give me a call or contact me and let me know what's happening, and most likely that I'd have my bag within the next couple of days. So I went off feeling a bit, you know, disappointed and let down. This had never happened to me before. And while I was walking around, I think it was Nagoya Station on my way home, I got a phone call, and I was really surprised. It had only been about an hour or two since that conversation and since that paperwork, and the staff called me personally to tell me that they had located my luggage and that it would be sent to my place for free within, I think it was 2 days. So I landed on, I think, Monday morning, and they said it would arrive, when was that, Thursday? My mind's all a mess now. I think I arrived on Tuesday morning, and they said it would arrive on Thursday morning. So yeah, I was eagerly waiting for it, and the clock was ticking, and it was 11:30 and it still hadn't arrived, and I was a bit anxious, and I was thinking maybe it might not come. But 11:45 came around, and there it was. The guy knocked on my door, and it was one of those happy, smiley delivery drivers who brought it all the way upstairs and you know, got me to sign the doc and all that. and everything was in there. Nothing had been tampered with, and everything was packaged really beautifully. I had given them a copy of the key. Even that was neatly, securely wrapped in this little case and attached to the handle of the bag. Very impressive service, and I was very happy about that. So thank you to the staff at Chubu International Airport who did that for me. That was really good, and I appreciate it. Okay, next up, what have we got? New toothbrush. I put up this a photo of this new toothbrush that I got, and the main reason, I don't usually share things about, you know, personal hygiene products, but the reason I'm sharing this is because it's on sale. Well, technically not on sale, but there's a cashback campaign, and you can get up to about, I think it's technically 8,000 yen in cashback if you buy a Philips Sonicare electric toothbrush. The one I went with, it's a 4,000 cashback, and if you buy replacement heads with it, you get an extra 1,000 cashback, so I'm eligible for 5,000 yen cashback. I did the paperwork when I got home. Paperwork, not really. It's all done electronically now, which is really nice. You just get home, you scan a QR code, you take photos of your receipt and the warranty card in the box, and you send it off with, of course, with your details, your name, your date of birth, all that sort of thing. And they told me that I'd be notified within the next month and a half, something like that. And I should be getting 5,000 yen. So that's why I'm sharing it. The offer is on until the end of August this year in 2025. So if you're interested in a new electric toothbrush, I highly recommend taking a look at the Philips Sonicare range. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the campaign is limited to Bic Camera, Yodobashi, Joshin, and possibly a couple of other retail outlets. So make sure you check the details if you want, but if you go to your nearest Bic, you can't go wrong, Bic or Yodobashi, and check them out. And by the way, I just went to the dentist a couple of days ago, and she said that my brushing is really good. And I said, I'm really happy to hear that, because I just got a new toothbrush about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm glad to know that I don't have to take it in for a refund. And she was laughing at that one because, yeah, she was like, it's actually really good. And I didn't tell her anything. She just said that looking at my teeth. So it's made a difference, I suppose. Alrighty, that's all I've got for this episode. Thanks for hanging around for so long. I know it's been a bit of a long one today, but this is how it is on Ohazassu. We just turn the camera on and we talk about stuff, things that have happened in daily life, things experienced as a foreign resident here in Japan. And now that we're here, we've got word of the day. By the way, for word of the day, if you're on X, you can click on the hashtag Ohazassu WOTD to bring up all of our word of the day words, or you can check out the whole list on the website at ohazassu.com. So, what is today's word of the day? I'm going to go with, I actually have a couple of candidates here. I'm going to go with kaidame. Kaidame is buying as many of something as you can. Okay, so if, as an Aussie, if you're going back and you want to buy as much Vegemite as you can, because that stuff is like gold in Japan, you would kaidame the Vegemite. Okay, so that's today's word, kaidame. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching episode 90 of the Ohazassu channel, and I look forward to seeing everyone later on. If you enjoyed this show and you want to support us, please click on that like button and subscribe for more videos from us in the future. Alrighty then, I'll catch you guys later. Bye for now.